And this month, we have been focusing on the scaffolding that makes it easier for students to do the hard work of giving feedback and revising. We're wrapping up today with the most controversial topic, instructor feedback. So my request today is that you play Peter Elbow's Believing Game. Developed in the early 1970s, Elbow's Believing Game encourages people to take multiple perspectives while delaying debates. Some of you might recognize this as inquiry pedagogy. Today, I'm going to ask you to believe these statements, and I'm going to call on people to read this statement aloud so that each statement gets a little airtime to sink in. So, Sarah, would you read the first bullet?
You can do your work diligently in a different way.
Thank you. Kristen, would you read the second bullet?
You don't have to read everything.
John, will you read the third bullet?
You can expect students to work harder on feedback than you do.
Juliana, would you read the fourth bullet?
You can give high-impact whole class feedback, including pre-written statements pasted into every student's revision plan.
And Ryan, could you read the final bullet?
You can trust students to take responsibility for their own learning.
Thank you for doing the read aloud with me. And I just am encouraging you, just stick with me. It's only going to be 15 minutes and then you can debate it, right? So instructor feedback and Eli Review works differently than in any other platform. That is intentional, even if it is uncomfortable. Jeff Grable, one of Eli's founders and now Associate Provost of MSU's Hub for Innovation, says that teacher feedback is the most labor-intensive, high-cost aspect of college. That means teachers are most likely to run out of personal resources before all students' needs are met. A scalable, equitable, fair solution is creating a feedback-rich peer learning environment. So I want you to think about student learning as a boulder. You can move that boulder with a long lever or a short one. Both levers work, but the short one costs you a lot more energy. In Eli's peer learning environment, instructors have two long levers to lift the quality of students' performance. First, in the review task design, where you guide students to meet the expectations of the assignment. And second, providing whole class feedback using the trends and models. These long levers allow you to do a little bit of work, but to have a big impact. Instructor feedback in revision plans or anywhere else is a short lever. It's labor intensive and high cost. But in revision plans, instructor feedback is also a threat. It threatens to overwrite peer feedback and undermines students' trust in the process. So when you, to give feedback in revision plans that supports peer feedback, you've got to keep in mind that a revision plan is like a read receipt, providing, holding students accountable for using peer feedback. It's also an archive of their revision decisions. An ocean engineer I talked to this week called it a mini step. When you look at this revision plan from my colleague Derek Miller, who teaches a high school in Michigan, you'll see that Derek is giving the student feedback about how to rewrite her revision plan so that she includes more of the why for adding each of those details. Derek is coaching Anne to be more clear about her revision decisions, and he's emphasizing her responsibility for becoming a better writer, not just fixing this draft. So when you comment on revision plans, there's a couple of moves that can help you craft good feedback. First, restate the current goals of the draft. Then you want a light touch to coach the thinking students are already doing before they start on the next draft. And there's really 5 of these. The first is go. This is the one you want to give most often. You'll say something like, I agree with the revision priorities you've set and I look forward to the next version. Or you might see a comment like shuffle. You've prioritized priority 4, but I think that should be higher. It seems more important to me because blah, 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 blah. You also are likely to give a comment that encourages students to rethink something, and it might sound something like this. I noticed that classmate 17 suggested blah, but it wasn't included in your revision plan, perhaps because it came in late. I think you should revisit that comment because. Here's the ad. This is the one that cost you the most. None of your reviewers pointed out blank. You often have to give this to your best writers. And then the dreaded see me. If the revision plan is thin, your thick paragraph of helpful feedback isn't going to make up for the thinking writers aren't doing on their own. So don't write the thick paragraph. Invite a conversation. Once you've restated the goals for the assignment and then coach students thinking between drafts using one of these moves, you want to wrap up with a reminder of what's to come in the next writing cycle. So let me show you an example from John, and I'm springing this on him, but he lets me get away with it, so it's okay. So here is on the left a comment to one student and a comment on the right to another student. I've highlighted the parts of the feedback that are unique to each student. This is not cheating. This is teaching students to process the process of making revision decisions using information they already have in their assignment sheets, peer feedback, and textbook. So, how do you go about building this kind of paragraph so that you can copy and paste into your students' revision plans? I'm going to explain it, and this is something that, John, would you please share the link so that people can see this as well? I'm going to walk you through the ways I would do this in responding to revision plans, and I'm going to do that by showing you this little Google Doc. So I would start with opening a writing space, something, Google Docs, wherever you write stuff, start. And then you're going to write the paragraph that reminds students of the current goals of the draft. This is where you're going to restate it, but you're not going to reuse anything you've said before, nothing from the assignment sheet, nothing from the announcements. It's got to sound like fresh text. But say again to students what this draft was about and what they're supposed to get out of the peer learning activity. You can leave yourself some blanks like I did here. So that is the first step. The second step is you want to practice writing to real students. And in a previous semester, we called this the bellwether 4. And so we want to look for a strong student, a middle student, a struggling but trying student, and a struggling but not trying student. So I'm going to show you how to find that. In a completed review task, and this is all teachers that were participating in my online PD session, so no students were harmed in this, just teachers, right? If you use tallied responses, you can click the overall and sort them from low to high. And then you can just sort of spot check based on your read of the numbers or your knowledge of that student. And you can say, okay, the student who's probably the weakest and not trying is this one. So that's a bellwether student for me. I'm going to click on that student's name. I'm going to click on that draft. I'm going to read the draft, and then I'm going to write a paragraph to that particular student. And that will help me sound human even when I'm trying to write a kind of feedback that will be copy and pasted to other students. So that you can see that I've sort of drafted that in this Google Doc where I've got go and I've got sample comments that I have collected, and then I have shuffle. There's none for shuffle because in online PD people don't get enough comments to shuffle, but you probably will get one in your assignments. And then rethink. So let me pause. Does it make sense so far how to use tallied responses to find a student who is struggling? Everybody with me that far? Yes? No? Did I lose everybody?
We're all holding up our thumbs.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think we're all okay.
Oh, you're holding, oh, I had closed the video so that I could see everything. Okay, that helps. Sorry about that. Okay, so you got to find the struggling student. You'll find a struggling student that you think is trying really hard, but still struggling. So you would find that one. Then you find somebody in the middle, and then you would find a superstar, a strong student. And you would just practice writing the revision feedback to those four. And you would keep track of it in your little document wherever you've got things. And so your last piece is to write the final paragraph. And that is where you say to a writer what their next step is. And again, the secret here is not to repeat yourself exactly. It's got to be fresh language, but you're saying the same thing, and you're just creating a narrative that helps students understand how the pieces fit together. Right? So now you've got this big long document, and you can copy and paste the appropriate pieces. You're going to have to write a little bit probably for some, but most of it will be copy and paste, and that's how you can go pretty fast. So now that we've sort of talked about this strategy for instructor feedback to revision plans, what I want you to do before you start to like run through the whole stack is to look back at the paragraphs you're written and ask this question: is your feedback supporting peer feedback? Because that's the most important goal. If you are contradicting or moving away from or adding to or redirecting in ways that the peer feedback activity and support, you are the bomb. And that's not the good bomb, right? You are a threat to the whole peer learning environment that you've created. So check your work to be sure that you've done as much as you can to affirm writers' use of peer feedback and writers' learning from giving feedback to other people, right? Support the peer feedback with your own feedback. So in this month, we have spent some time with Carlos and Boyd's model of feedback literacy. How do you think your feedback on a revision plan supports students' feedback literacy? What is your role of giving feedback in a revision plan in building feedback literacy in this model?
I think it would help with managing affect.
Why is that, Sarah?
Because if you support the other students in what they're saying and join into that, I think it makes it less alienating and easier to understand and like integrate.
Great, thank you. Other ideas?
Yeah, I want to add that, or admit that I didn't read the article until last week, and then really dug into this article. I mean, I know we've been talking about it for a few weeks, but we've just been talking about this graphic here. But I really read this article this week, and I think it helps all the boxes here in a really big way. Appreciating feedback because we're helping them learn that, or to take feedback in from their peers, but really making judgments, validating their judgments. You know, since Sarah already mentioned managing affect, I'll focus there on making judgment and then taking action, because you're moving them on, right? It's like, it's not just this one thing. It's not just this one moment. There's something else coming.
Great. Juliana, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think it's not all that different from what John just said, but I think that your feedback on a student's revision plan can encourage them not to discount feedback from their peers. And I saw that the last time I commented on my students' revision plans, that sometimes they just ignored good feedback, and so that then I had an important role to play to say, you actually got good feedback from this peer, and this is why.
Yeah, I was as preparation for this call, I actually looked back at the feedback I've given in revision plans in all the PD workshops since August. And one of the surprising trends was how often I had to tell a writer what a reviewer meant, right? Because they were so close to it that the peer feedback was just unintelligible or felt wrong, but it was absolutely right if you understood what they meant, right? So just sometimes I think of my role in a revision plan as just restating what I see, right? Say it back, mirror it back, to help the medicine go down a little more smoothly. Other reactions to this, this is a challenging way to think about what is an instructor supposed to do, right? Like I didn't tell you about putting your own feedback in drafts, right? Instead, I'm encouraging you to participate at a different moment and in a different kind of behavior, right? What is the revision decision a writer is or is not making, and how can you help them build revision decision skills rather than asking you to pay attention to the draft itself as an artifact? So what challenges you about thinking about instructor feedback in this kind of way, where you've got these parts, where you're just restating, where you're restating the purpose, doing the moves, and then doing your foreground of the next steps?
I think one of the things that I like about it is it makes the feedback more collaborative. So we aren't coming in as the authoritarians, and we're validating the student writer's authority over the choices that he or they are making. And then we aren't the only audience, I think. So we're looking at the feedback, we're looking at their plan and nudging them, but also still letting them, continue to make the choices that they want. So I think that that's helpful for all of us, like makes more of a horizontal relationship with the students who are giving feedback, the writers who are accepting it, and the teacher.
Great. Thank you, Jolie. Yeah, it's very much about authority, right? This is student-centered pedagogy. Lift up students, don't insert yourself and slam them.
And then that takes you to the first box, appreciating feedback, because we're helping to break down that idea that students come into the course with, that I only trust my instructor. That stuff we talked about weeks ago, I don't trust my peers. And then the instructor, I'm going with what Jolie said, the instructor is actually saying, well, I actually like what your peers did. You should trust what they said here because it's pretty good feedback, but it's not me saying it, right? I'm saying,
Yes.
Wow, that was pretty good feedback from classmate number 7.
Right. Good. So I'm going to go back to the statements I asked you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, it's really loud in here. So, but I was just going to say, I'm not sure where this falls, but I also think sometimes there's an aspirational aspect to giving comments on the revision plan. Like, I really agree with how you prioritize that because this really is more important. And sometimes I think the students don't think that much, or I haven't emphasized it enough that they think that much about prioritizing, but next time they're like, oh yeah, I guess I did prioritize that, and give it more thought next time.
Yeah, that's such an important comment because this is really shifting you from responding to the artifact to responding to the process, right? Where do you see a student engaging in the behaviors that will transfer beyond this product? And if you can talk more about that, the product will take care of itself, not only this product, but 3 products down the road. But it's really hard to change because responding to the draft itself is where we get the most training and, we get the most worry. And there's sometimes it's great to see a draft make a leap from a riddle of problems to having very few, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the writer got a skill from that change that will transfer to the next one. So this is really a big shift. And so I still want you to just keep sitting with these things that I've asked you to believe, maybe beyond this 15 minutes, but you really can interact with student writing in a different way. You can skim all the things Eli collects for you because Eli collects everything, but you are not obligated to read it all in order to give good feedback, because what you're responding to is the plan. Is there enough evidence about effective decision making in that revision plan that you can trust the student to take responsibility for their own learning? And if there's not enough evidence that the revision plan is going to lead them toward good revision, then you pull them in for a conversation. Don't try to write your way into a student's better performance. So I'm going to stop the video on that lovely note, and I will take your